So, as part of the Gita Sandesh program, the chapter that we're going to pick up today is chapter 9, which is titled Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya Yoga. It's a very important chapter in the middle section of the Bhagavad Gita. But let's do a quick review of chapter 8. So, chapter 8 is titled Akshara Brahma Yoga, which Srila Prabhupada translates to attaining the Supreme. So, in the 7th chapter, we discovered who is the boss, what is his role versus our role, and how do we interface and interact with him. What's the benefit of working for him? And in the 8th chapter, the 7th chapter ends with the Lord saying, those who think of me at the time of death, they don't have to come back to this world again. So in the 8th chapter, the Lord picks up this topic of death and talks about those who die thinking of him and those who die having devoted their entire lifestyle. And the chapter 8 began with Arjuna asking 8 questions, which is who is Brahman, what is Atman, what is Karma, what is this Prakriti, who are these Daivas, what is this Adi Bhuta, who is Adi Daiva, who is this Adi Yajna. And the last question that Arjuna asks is, for those who are engaged in devotional service to you, my dear Lord, how can they know Krishna at the time that they die? And in response to this question, the Lord answers the first 7 questions in a single shloka, and then 2 shlokas, and then the last question, which is about death, the Lord specifically says that anybody who remembers him at the time that the soul is exiting the body, that immediately they come back to him. Immediately they attain his nature, and the Lord says of this, there is no doubt. And in the very next shloka, the Lord also says that anybody who remembers whatever it is that he is remembering as he is quitting his body, that state he will certainly attain without fail. Essentially, the Lord is saying, whatever you are thinking of at the time that you die, that's what you're going to get. So if you think of the Lord, you're going to get the Lord. If you're not thinking of the Lord, whatever it is that you're thinking about, you're going to get that. And then the Lord advises Arjuna in Shloka 7 by telling Arjuna that Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. And the Lord says this way, when you fix up your mind, when you fix up your intelligence on me, you will attain me without any doubt. We said that chapter 7 talks about the bhaktas who are practicing bhakti, but it's mixed with yoga. So this is called the Yoga Mishra Bhakti in chapter 7, which means yoga being practiced with an element of bhakti. What does that mean? So such a yogi, such a bhakta, they don't want any sense gratification. They do accept that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, but what they want is they want liberation. So this is called practicing mixed bhakti. Then what is Kevala Bhakti? Kevala Bhakti means just simply doing everything for the pleasure of the Lord. Whereas here, their goal is liberation. If your goal is liberation, that is not considered pure bhakti. A pure devotee of the Lord simply worships the Lord for the desire and pleasure of the Lord. So, pure devotee does not worry about whether he is going to be liberated or not, whether he is going to take birth again or not. He is strictly focused on serving Krishna with love. So, that's the difference between the Yoga Mishra Bhakta versus a Ananya Bhakta or Kevala Bhakta. So this Bhakta worships Krishna to please him, whereas the Yoga Mishra Bhakta worships Krishna for liberation. So if you have Ashtanga Yoga to your left and Bhakti Yoga to the right, assuming that from left to right is a progress, somewhere in between Ashtanga Yoga and Bhakti is this Yoga Mishra Bhakta. It's a combination of practicing Dhyana Yoga with a little bit of. So there are three comparisons that are made in chapter 8 in the 28 shlokas. One is, if you remember Krishna, what happens? The other is, what is the process by which we can remember Krishna? Both for the Yoga Mishra Bhakta as well as the pure Bhakta. And what is the result of remembering Krishna at the time of death? Both for the Yoga Mishra Bhakta and the Kevala Bhakta, the one who is practicing pure Bhakti. So in this process, we're going to talk about a few pastimes that will probably make it easier to understand some of these concepts. So Krishna's essential instruction in chapter 8 is that the only thing we have to remember at the time of death is Krishna. The only thing we should never do is we should never forget Krishna. Ante Narayana Smriti. Remembering Krishna at the time of death. If you remember Krishna at the time of death, then your life is successful. How to remember Krishna during life and how to think of Krishna at death. Both are covered. So one of the other things we talked about is the trajectory of the Bhagavad Gita, where the Lord is step by step trying to elevate Arjuna's consciousness. So in the second chapter, the Lord has offered Arjuna two choices. One is, we all have to work for whatever results we are seeking. Therefore, if we want success, we have to put in effort. We have to be determined. That's the first option. The second option is, well, no matter how painful it may be to do one's duty and responsibility, we have to work out of a sense of duty rather than out of a sense of the consequences of those duties. The third chapter, the Lord says, do your duty and remember me. In this eighth chapter here, the Lord is saying, first remember me and then do your duty. So how can we remember Krishna? We can look at a few pastimes from the scriptures. There is a sage known as Pipalayana, and he travels to the heavenly planets along with a lot of other sages and Narada Muni. and there is a dance performance going on, uh, along with musical instruments by the Gandharvas. So the dancers are dancing. Indra is sitting on the throne, the demigods are all there. So as the sages enter, along with Narada Muni, the minute you see a holy person or an exalted person, uh, the etiquette is you have to rise and offer your obeisances. So as the sages entered along with Narada Muni, everybody else rises to offer their obeisances, except for the two dancers. The dancers continue to dance. So Pipalayana briefly allowed his ego to get the better of him. Noticing that these two dancers did not offer their obeisance like all the others had in the assembly, he curses them for not bowing down to the sages. So these two dancers' names are Haha and Huhu. So he curses them. So Huhu becomes a crocodile and Haha becomes a tiger. This crocodile comes into the Bahulavan forest and later gets released by Lord Krishna uh, from the curse of Pippalayan. This is Bahulavan is one of the 12 forests in Vrindavan. The dancers accept the curse very meekly and with a great deal of humility. They tell Pipalayana, "You are a most exalted sage. Why don't you go within you? Rewind what happened in your mind and tell us what we did wrong." So Pipalayana goes into meditation and he rewinds the scene that had unfolded to which he had responded. And as he is watching this rewind of what had happened, he sees that Haha and Huhu had offered their obeisances to him mentally. Their body did not bow down because their body was trying to please the demigods. They were doing service. So service also should not be interrupted. So since they were serving the demigods, they continued dancing. But it's not that they had not observed the entrance of the sages along with Narada Muni. So they offered their obeisances mentally. Having seen this rewind, Vipalayana gets very upset with himself. So he not only curses himself, he curses Mother Earth and he curses Narada Muni too. He tells Mother Earth, when you realized I had made this mistake, you should have immediately swallowed me alive for the mistake. And he turns around to Narada Muni and says, well, when you realized I made a mistake, you should not have kept quiet. You should have told me. So essentially, we should do our activities in such a way that as if the results of depend fully on you doing that activity. So we should act like there is no God, that everything depends on you. And once you've done acting, then you have to let go and remember you are not the actor. Everything is as per the desire of the Lord. So that means the outcome will happen irrelevant of your hard work and activity. So you can recall Krishna never told Arjuna, no, I have anyway come to kill. You go take a nap, I'll take care of things. The Lord had come to kill. He could have killed everybody on the battlefield with his Sudarshan Chakra some other way, but he was using this as a teaching opportunity for Arjuna and also for his devotees. So, from our side, Krishna expects 100% effort. But once we finish putting in that effort, we should sit back and understand that the results are not in our hands. It is up to Krishna. The best way we can serve the Lord is by doing our duty and responsibility. And service is the way in which we express our love for the Lord. Simply telling Krishna, I love you, you're my greatest, and this, that, and the other, is not going to impress Krishna. So simply saying I love somebody is not very satisfying. So service is important to strengthen your relationship, your bond with the other person. And it's not different in our relationship with Krishna. So simply telling ourselves, I've surrendered to Krishna is not sufficient for Krishna. He expects you to constantly increase your service, your selfless service towards Him. So setting aside time for Krishna is something that can really help us. So this Yoga Mishra Bhakta's desire for liberation is considered a material desire, because they have accepted the Lord in return that the Lord may give them mukti or moksha. So in that sense, even asking the Lord for moksha, a bhakta considers that as troubling the Lord, unnecessary. It's still in the mood of I want, I want, I want. So even if one wants liberation, that is considered a material desire. If Krishna knows what is best for you, as per the devotee's philosophy, a pure devotee's philosophy, then a pure devotee does not worry about when Krishna is going to release them from the cycle of birth. He leaves that up to Krishna. So that means even a desire for liberation is considered a material desire, because you're asking the Lord for something in return for doing something. So you're treating the Lord like a businessman. I will do this, you give me that. Lord does not like that kind of business transaction. So this Yoga Mishra Bhakta path is a strenuous path. Therefore, when the Lord talks about death, He lays down all the criteria that this Yoga Mishra Bhakta has to meet in order for him to achieve liberation. Which is, he has to leave at a certain time of the day, a certain time of the sun, traveling in the north, whether it is in the waxing moon or waning moon, whether it is in light or in dark, time of the day. Krishna says all of that is going to determine what his destination is, which means if he doesn't check all those boxes, if this Yoga Mishra Bhakta, practicing Dhyana Yoga and mixing it a little bit of Bhakti, if he doesn't time the exit of the soul from the body, then all of that goes to waste. In what way? Even if he doesn't get one of those boxes right, Maximum, he will go to the moon planets, enjoy himself, and come back to the take birth. The Lord says, however, devotees don't have to go through this. It's called Ananya Bhakti. So if someone fails performing bhakti, still he succeeds. Still he succeeds. Jatayu from the Ramayana, he was no match for Ravana, but he desperately wanted to do some seva for the Lord. Therefore, he fights Ravana while Sita was being abducted, and he in turn gets hacked. Lord Ram gets the news, and Jatayu was not successful in his service. He had a desire to serve the Lord, but he didn't accomplish what he wanted to do. The Lord is not looking for your perfection in service, although that should be our attitude and mood as a devotee. The Lord is simply looking at the sincerity of the service. Are you eager and anxious to serve the Lord without asking for anything in return? Or are you eager to serve the Lord so that you can be recognized as a great servant? Are you serving the Lord to boost your own ego? So the Lord is looking at the sincerity of your service, the selflessness of your service. And what did Lord Ram do for Jatayu? He treats him like his own father and performs the final rites and sends him back to the spiritual world. Jatayu was not successful as per mundane definition of success. He didn't succeed in stopping Ravana, but he was determined to do his service no matter how frail or weak or incapacitated he may have been in comparison to Ravana's strength. So one of the warnings for us as a devotee is that as we are practicing bhakti and we are enjoying the initial days of performing bhakti because you have some wondrous experiences, you have some mystical experiences, you can feel and experience Krishna in your life. We have to be careful that as we are watering this bhakti creeper, we are not also watering the weeds that go with it, like ego, pride, arrogance, etc. So, as we are watering this bhakti creeper, we must be very careful to weed out the anarthas. Otherwise, both will grow and eventually the weeds will overwhelm the bhakti creeper and kill it. So, when we are performing bhakti, we have to be very careful about our attitude, about thinking how great a bhakta we are. Suddenly, we are experiencing all these symptoms. That is the realm of pure bhaktas. Yeah. So we have to be careful about it. So there was one prostitute. She would go to the river every day. And across the river on the other side of the bank of the river, there used to be a Brahmana. So every day the Brahmana was coming to the river to perform his spiritual activities. And every day the prostitute was coming to the river, perhaps to wash her clothes. But they were always on the opposite side of the banks. So, looking at this Brahmana every day, the prostitutes used to think, how fortunate is he? And what a sinful creature I am. And she used to think, I wonder what will happen to me after my death because I'm engaged in some very unsavory activities. But she would always, in her mind, respect and honor that Brahmana. Just looking at him, she would think, what a great personality. What a wonderful devotee. Now, the same thing, the Brahmana used to notice this prostitute across the river, and he used to think, what a lowly life she's living. What a sinful person she is. I'm sure she's going to hell. So each day the prostitute used to think of the Brahmana as an exalted devotee. The Brahmana used to look at the prostitute and think what a lowly creature she was and how unfortunate she was. And the fact that she's going to pay a very heavy price for the activities that she's engaged in. So soon enough, both of them die. The prostitute goes back to the spiritual world, and the Brahmana goes to Yamaraj. And he's completely puzzled. He protests to Yama and says, what is this? I'm a Brahmana. I've led an exemplary life. I've not done anything to violate the scriptures. Why am I here in the hellish planet? So Yamaraj explains to him, my dear Brahmana, you have a long way to go. So this is how our supposed practices can pollute us, where we begin to see others as less worthy than us, where you begin to see yourself as someone extra special who's achieved something extra. So the problem is this with this Yoga Mishra Bhakta, he has to get it 100% right, otherwise all of his energy is wasted. Just like this Brahmana, the one area where he failed was critiquing another human being for no reason other than the fact that he felt he was superior, that he was a pious person, he was a noble person, he was following the scriptures. So that's the price we have to pay if we don't mind, if we don't pay attention to our activities on a daily basis. It's very easy to criticize others. Even mental criticism has repercussions. Yes. So if you look at Vibhishan, Ravan, and Kumbhakarna, actually both Vibhishan and Ravan, both of them ask for immortality from Brahma. And but then what does Ravana do? His pride got the better of him, and he said, I don't want to be killed by whatever. He lists a long thing, and he excludes human beings because he thought he has already conquered the demigods. What is a lowly human being going to do to him? If the demigods were under his control. So Ravana thought there's really no need for me to seek protection because I've already conquered the demigods. The demigods work for me. So why should I worry about an ordinary human being? Therefore, the Lord comes to teach a lesson in the form of an apparently ordinary human being and takes his life. So that was Ravana's folly when seeking immortality. Well, when Kumbhakarna also asks for a particular boon, he actually wanted to occupy the position of Indra. So the demigods, understanding the risk, they request Mother Saraswati to influence his tongue when he's reciting the mantra, when he's making his request. So instead of asking for Indra's post, instead of using the word Indra, Saraswati Devi twists his tongue and he ends up saying Nidra. So Lord Brahma certainly grants him his desire, which is sleep for 6 months, and he'll wake up for just a day and then go back to sleep. Vibhishana was also born in a demoniac family. But when his turn came to ask Brahma for a boon, Vibhishana says, "My dear Lord Brahma, I don't want anything material. Can you just give me bhakti for Lord Ram?" Brahma is so pleased with what he hears. He makes him immortal, or Chiranjeevi in this case. This Vibhishana's bracelet that he wore is still there in Puri Jagannath. One day, one of the priests in the Puri Jagannath temple, at night time, he has locked the doors to the temple and walking home, and he sees a huge shadow behind him, a huge personality following. Huge means huge. He turns around and asks, "Who are you?" And this person says, "I'm Vibhishan." So it is said that in Puri Jagannath, all the demigods and all the great souls come to see the Lord during the night time, because that's the time for them to take darshan of God. So for the few hours that the temple is closed at night time, that's when all the demigods come to Puri Jagannath to take darshan of the Lord. So this pujari says, "What proof do I have that you're Vibhishan?" And Vibhishan says, "Here, you can take my bracelet." And that bracelet is like the size of a chariot wheel. It's that huge. So clearly showing that people from a different yuga were much taller, much larger. They were like gigantic compared to Kali Yuga human beings. So this bracelet, if you're fortunate, I have not seen it. I've visited Puri times, but it's there. If you know a panda, they can take you to see the bracelet of Vibhishan. Vaishnavas never die. They live to serve the Lord, and therefore they are immortal. So the process here is that you have to work very hard and depend on yourself completely to die at the right moment if you're practicing anything but pure bhakti. And in this chapter also the Lord talks about the difference between the spiritual world and the material world, where he calls the material world dukkhalayam shashvatam. This is a place of misery, and it is a temporary place. It is a place which is created as a jail cell for you to reform yourself. And of course, there is some amount of punishment involved as well. But this jail is so beautifully constructed, it doesn't have hard walls. You can leave this jail anytime you want, but you have to meet certain conditions. Krishna says that to overcome Prakriti, which is the three modes of material nature, which is Sattvagun, Rajagun, and Tamagun, is indeed very, very difficult. But he says to those who surrender to him, they can easily cross over these three gunas. And in the process, the Lord also talks about how this creation, maintenance, and destruction happens in a particular cycle, that everything exists for a certain period of time during a day of Brahma. And when then Brahma has to go to sleep at his night time, how everything goes underwater. So 24 hours of Brahma versus 24 hours on the earth is different. So time is very relative. So, for example, 12 hours of the demigods is our 6 months, and another 12 hours is their night time, which is another 6 months. So, one day for Lord Brahma and others, demigods, is actually 1 year for us. But if you go to Brahmaloka, then the span of life is much, much larger. So Brahma's 1 day is 4.32 billion Earth years. 12 hours of Brahma, 12 hours of Brahma is equivalent to 4.32 billion Earth years. That's how long Brahma's 1 day is. So another 12 hours of Brahma, which is his night time, is another 4.32 billion Earth years, which means 1 day of Brahma is 8.6 billion Earth years. Like this, even Brahma lives for 100 years. So 100 years of Lord Brahma in our universe is equivalent to 311 trillion 40 billion Earth years. That's how long Brahma's lifespan is. And that lifespan of Lord Brahma is 1 millisecond for Krishna. Krishna visits Brahma once a day. So when Brahma has to go to sleep, the bottom 11 planetary systems get submerged in Pralaya. So this is called a partial destruction. So the bottom 11 planetary systems will go underwater when Brahma goes to sleep. So when you wake up, what do you do? We all walk into the bathroom, brush our teeth, take a bath. If you're a mother or your wife, you'll come to the kitchen. You'll start preparing food, breakfast, lunch, get your children ready for school. You do the same thing every day. So Brahma also does the same thing every day. What is his only duty? When he wakes up, he has to create again. He has to figure out how to get those 11 planetary systems out of the water and begin the process of creation again. So every time Brahma goes to sleep and wakes up, his job duty is to check into the office and start the process of creation. This is something, before he does that, he has to do intense tapas. He has to figure out how to push the water down and how to create again. In between, he has to deal with demons like Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaksh, asking for this boon, asking for that boon. He also has to finish his sadhana before he goes to work. So when Brahma has to give up his life, then all of the universe goes underwater. And that's when Rudra starts dancing for the ultimate destruction of all that exists. And Anantashesha begins to spit fire from his mouth. And then the Samvartaka cloud comes and inundates all the Brahmandas so that the entire cosmos goes underwater. So what happens? All of the living entities who still have some karmic reactions for which they have to take birth again go back into the body of Mahavishnu and rest. And when Mahavishnu gets ready to create again, all the Jivatmas take up their various bodies, whether it's in an animal, bird, human being, and then this cycle just continues. So the same cycle Krishna will talk about again in chapter 9. So if a Jivatma has performed so many pious activities, he can take on the role of Brahma. But once his role of Brahma is over, then he has to come back and take birth in the middle planetary systems. But sometimes the post of Brahma is occupied by a devotee. So when Mahapralaya happens, then this devotee does not have to take birth again, they go directly back to the spiritual. It is said that our Brahma, the four-headed Brahma, is a devotee of the Lord. So he is not an ordinary human being. So as I mentioned, all these different demigods are actually posts. They are job titles. They are not their actual names. So that brings us to chapter, which I said is a very important chapter. How does chapter 8 end? The Lord talks about how, according to the Vedic opinion, there are two ways of passing from this world, one in light and one in darkness. When one passes in light, he does not come back. Does not come back means does not come back to take birth again. But when one passes in darkness, he returns. Returns means he has to take birth again. Although the devotees know these two paths, O Arjuna, they are never bewildered, they are always fixed in devotion. So Krishna is saying his devotees need not worry about timing their death because he is in control. A person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas, performing sacrifices, undergoing austerities, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. Simply by performing devotional service, he attains all these, and at the end, he reaches the supreme eternal goal. So, Krishna is saying, for those who are my bhaktas, they already get the benefits of performing jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, karma yoga, all kinds of austerities and sacrifices. Without having done it, they get the benefit of it. So, bhakti is all inclusive of the other processes also. So, which brings us to chapter 9. So, the Lord is about to reveal even more confidential information to Arjuna. So, let's discover this. So, this particular chapter is called Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya Yoga. Raja Vidya, the king of knowledge. Raja Guhya, the king of all secrets. So, the Lord is about to reveal something even more mystical and mysterious about the science of the relationship between the Jivatma and the Param. Before we begin, let's offer our most humble obeisances to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, because it's the King of Knowledge and the King of Secrets, the acronym for today is KING. So, Krishna is going to talk about the potency of this knowledge, this transcendental knowledge that Lord had talked about, this inconceivable relationship between Jivatma, Paramatma, and Prakriti. Krishna will come back and criticize those who do not worship him, and he will contrast that with those who do worship him. And in this particular chapter, the Lord really glorifies both his bhaktas and the process of bhakti. So he glorifies his bhaktas who are performing bhakti. So let us see how this chapter begins. So the Lord says, my dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization. knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. Krishna is saying, you know, I'm about to reveal something even more beautiful about this relationship. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets, hence the title Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. Krishna is talking about bhakti here. By performing bhakti, one can experience Krishna personally in our lives, and hence the Lord is saying this kind of direct perception comes through the gradual process of self realization. And Krishna says bhakti is the perfection of all religion. Devotion, devotional service is the perfection of all religion. This kind of bliss that you experience by practicing bhakti, Krishna says it is everlasting. And because because the devotees experience so much joy in serving the Lord, they perform their services to the Lord with absolute joyful abandonment. They don't think, oh my God, do I really have to work for Krishna? Why does he want me to work for him? Why can't I work for myself? A devotee never thinks like this. Why? Because they are experiencing the joy of working for Krishna. And they know what it felt like when they had to work for themselves. The miserable state that they were in. Hence Krishna is saying, this bhakti, it is everlasting. And my bhaktas perform this bhakti with great deal of joy. And it is the perfection of religion because you experience the results immediately and directly. So immediately in the next shloka, the Lord contrasts them to those who are not his devotees. Those who are not faithful in this devotional service cannot attain me, O conqueror of enemies. Therefore, they return to the path of birth and death in this material world. So, categorically, Krishna is saying if you're not his devotee, you have to take birth again. That's the stark contrast between the two shlokas. If you don't perform devotional service to Krishna, Krishna is guaranteeing you another birth in this miserable world, this temporary world. By me in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. And yet everything that is created does not rest in me. Behold my mystic opulence. Although I am the maintainer of all living entities, and although I am everywhere, I am not part of this cosmic manifestation. For myself is the very source of creation. So Krishna is repeating again and again to Arjuna that he is the topmost. There is nobody equal to him or greater than him. He is the source of heaven. And Krishna says, understand that as the mighty wind blowing everywhere rests always in the sky, all created beings rest in me. So the wind never breaches the boundary of the ether or the sky. The sky always contains the wind. Or although the sky is such a subtle element, it can only be seen indirectly through the process of refraction, color reflection. O son of Kunti, at the end of the millennium, all material manifestations enter into my nature, and at the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I create them again. So at the end of the millennium means at the end of Brahma's life. When even Brahma has to die, Krishna is explaining that Everything, all the cosmos, the Jivatmas, Prakriti, everything comes back to him as Mahavishnu. And then, when a new Brahma and a new Brahmanda have to be created, Krishna says, I start that creation process again. The whole cosmic order is under me. Under my will, it is automatically manifested again and again. And under my will, it is annihilated at the end. So Krishna is saying everything follows a sequence. Everything is on autopilot. Things happen as per the cycle of time. Creation happens, maintenance, and destruction. And here the Lord is saying, this material nature, which is all of this Prakriti, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. And then the Lord begins to criticize those who don't accept him, those who think of him as an ordinary human being. So there are three levels of confidential knowledge revealed in the Bhagavad Gita. The first one was revealed in chapter 2, which is that there is a difference between the body and the soul, that the soul is eternal, the body is not. The second element of confidential knowledge is that there is a relationship between the soul and the super soul, and this is established in chapter 7. And the most confidential knowledge, which is being revealed here in chapter 9, is that when you practice bhakti, the Lord directly reciprocates with you, and hence you experience His presence in your life. So, which means Krishna is saying if you practice bhakti, there is almost an immediate experience of you practicing intense bhakti. You experience the Lord's presence and mercy in your life again and again and again. So, this sambandha, knowing that you have a relationship with the Lord, is good. But once you know who the Lord is, your instinct and your knowledge and your intellect should tell you that your only job is to serve Him. And when you begin to serve Him with love, the Lord begins to reciprocate. So, what are the two qualifications that the Lord is saying to understand this most confidential knowledge, which is that the Lord reciprocates with His bhaktas when they perform pure devotional service? To understand this knowledge, Krishna says, first of all, there should be zero envy in you. And the word the Lord uses is anusuyava. You should be non-envious. Second thing that the Lord is saying, you must have faith in me. That if you perform bhakti, I will reciprocate on my time scale, not on yours. So sometimes bhaktas perform bhakti, and when they don't get any experiences, they begin to be disappointed with the process. So the Lord is saying, make sure you have faith when you're performing bhakti. So, what are the characteristics of this king of knowledge? First of all, it is the topmost of knowledge. It's the most secret and confidential aspects of this transcendental knowledge. Krishna uses the word pavitram to describe this knowledge. Pure. Uttamam, it is the highest. Pratyaksha dharmyam, it is the perfection of religion. Susukham, not just sukham. Lord is saying susukham, very joyful. Avyayam, it's everlasting. The results of practicing bhakti are everlasting. It's a permanent credit in your account. So Krishna talks about the inconceivable relationship between him and bhakti. and how the Jivatma is caught in this cycle. Maya prakritihi suyate sacharacharan hetuna nena kaunteya jagad viparivartate. So Krishna is saying everything is happening as per my direction. So Durga Devi, everything that she does it under my command. My command, she just executes. She does not deviate from her duty and responsibility. So, matter of fact, Durga Devi has the toughest job in this jail to take care of so many misfits. So, to the section where the Lord talks about non worship and then contrasts it with his devotees. Krishna says, Avajananti mam mudha manushim tanumashritam param bhavamajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. Krishna says, fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the supreme Lord of all that be. So some people, even in our culture, believe that Lord Krishna was just a historical personality. Maybe he was an extraordinary human being with extraordinary talent. They don't accept him as a supreme Lord. And what does Krishna think about these people? Mudha. Avajananti ma mudha. They don't know me, these mudhas. Just because I'm operating like a human being, they think I'm an ordinary personality. They don't realize I'm the Supreme Lord. He's saying I'm Maheshwaram and they deride me. They don't know me. What happens to them? To these mudhas who reject Krishna as just some ordinary person? Moghasha moga karmano mogha jnana vichetasa rakshasi mashurim chaiva prakritim mohinim shrita. What happens to such people? Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demoniac and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. Krishna says, since they reject me, I fulfill their desire of rejection, and they go further and further away from me into demoniac ways of life, ultimately into an atheistic way of life. And in such delusion where they think they are in control and there is no God that exists, everything that they do, Krishna says, I defeat them. How do I defeat them? Through the process of death. They have to give up everything that they've worked hard for. At the moment of death, everything is gone. So they are no longer God. Until they were alive, they thought they were God, they were in control, they are independent, they have free will, etc. Krishna is saying they will all get defeated. In the sense, death will ultimately take away everything from them. Now, Krishna will contrast these demons, mudras, these atheists, to his pure devotees. So, mudha versus Mahatma. Mahatmanastu mam partha daivim prakritim ashritaha bhajantya ananya manaso jnatva bhutadam avyayam. Krishna is saying, O son of Partha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. Krishna says, my Shakti potency, Yoga Maya, is protecting my great devotees. And what do his great devotees do? Krishna is talking about his great devotees. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. So once you've understood that Krishna is a Supreme Lord, the only thing left to do is to surrender and say, yes, you are the boss. Yes, I'm your servant. If I'm your servant, I'm meant to serve. and therefore I serve you with joy. That's what the Lord is saying his devotees do. They are simply serving him with great joy. And not just sometime, all the time, Krishna says. Fully engaged, not just 2 minutes a day, so arati, bow down, and you think, ah, yes, I've done great service to Krishna. No, no, no. His great devotees are never satisfied with the amount of service they do for Krishna. They are always wishing that time would expand, the number of hands and ears and eyes would expand, so that they could do more and more service to the Supreme Lord. A devotee is never satisfied with the amount of service he does for him. Because if a devotee is satisfied, then something's very wrong. So a devotee is always pushing himself to do more for the Lord. How do we recognize who is a Mahatma? Krishna is telling us how to recognize his pure devotee. Satatam kirtayanto ma yatantascha dridha prataha namasyantascha mam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. How do you recognize a bona fide guru, a bona fide acharya, a bona fide pure devotee of the Lord? Krishna is telling you how to recognize them. What are they doing? Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. Perpetually, Krishna is saying perpetually. They never give up. When they open their mouth, they are talking about Krishna, 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 Krishna. What are their activities? They are trying to connect every Jivatma with Krishna, 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 Krishna. They are always bowing down to Krishna because they recognize that they are in a humble position of a servant. And everything that they do it out of sheer love for the Supreme One. So Krishna is defining a Mahatma and also letting you and I know how to recognize a Mahatma. They will exhibit certain symptoms. What is that? When they open their mouth, they're always talking about Krishna. So anybody who's not always talking about Krishna, they are not a Mahatma. They are not a bona fide guru. They may be guru in other areas, but they are not a devotee. Great determination, no matter how many challenges come their way, physical or otherwise, financial or otherwise, they still continue to practice devotions. They don't give up. This is how you recognize Mahatma. Kirtayantaha, always chant. Dhradavrata, with a fixed vow. They are committed to Krishna and they'll never give up Krishna. Namasyanta, offering obeisances. Nitya yukta, nitya means always. Engaged in devotional activities. And then Krishna contrasts with some of the other types of devotees. These are not pure devotees. So there are others, Krishna says, who worship him, but they worship him indirectly. Ekatvena, there are those who worship the impersonal form of the Lord as the Brahma Jyoti in oneness, or that they themselves are God because they have realized Atma within them. Contrast that to Pritatvena, diverse as many. These are all the demigods, 33 crore demigods to worship, which is worshipping the Supreme Lord, but worshipping his representatives as devatas. Bahuda Vishvato Mukha, a step higher than worship of demigods, is worshipping the Virat Purusha form of the Lord, which exists in this material cosmos. as the Vishwarupa. So Krishna is saying all of these are also worshipping me, but they are not worshipping me, Krishna, directly. They are worshipping me indirectly. And Krishna talks about what happens to those who don't worship him directly versus those who worship him directly. Yanti deva vrata devan pitran yanti pitravrataha bhutani yanti bhutechya yanti mam yachinopi mam. Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings. And those who worship me will live with me. So, depending on who you're worshipping, that's going to be your destination, provided you have accumulated the appropriate level of pious credits or sinful uh, credits as well. So, only if you worship Krishna, Krishna says you come back to him to live with him. If you worship the demigods, you cannot go to Krishna because your desire has never been to please Krishna. If your desire was to please the Devata, then maximum you'll go to that Devata's planet. So that's the result. So different paths should ultimately lead to bhakti, but then the results are different. The motive of someone who's worshipping Krishna is just love and service. The motive of those who worship the demigods is because they want something in return, like Ravana and Kumbhakara, like Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksh, and the list can go on. The motive to worship Krishna out of love and service and devotion, examples like Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, Parikshit Maharaj. So Krishna will always act like a parent for us. He will give us what is good. We may throw a temper tantrum and ask for all kinds of things which are not for our ultimate good. Therefore, Krishna will not give you what he doesn't think is going to help you progress on the path of bhakti. Whereas demigods are like shopkeepers. You have to pay a price and you get what you want from them. So that's the difference between worshipping the demigods and worshipping Krishna. Worshipping Krishna, the results are eternal. Worshipping the demigods, the results are temporal. So remember, all those Rakshasas and demons who worship Brahma and Shiva, where did they end up? They got destroyed. Some of them got liberated, but we'll come to that in it's a different topic altogether. So these demigods are like the heads of various departments. So you could say the head of the electricity department is Surya, the construction head is Brahma, power is Agni, water is Varuna, and so on and so forth. So Krishna has divided this vast material universe into various departments, and each department he hands it off to various demigods. Like this, there are 33 crore demigods. But out of the 33 crore, we probably at best may worship 5 or 6 of them. We don't even know who the other demigods are and what their names are. So, how many demigods are we going to worship? Better to worship the one Krishna, because he is the supreme personality of God. Now, Krishna talks about, remember, we said the most confidential knowledge is being revealed here. The devotee is performing bhakti out of love. The bhakta is performing bhakti out of sheer love and pleasure to please the Lord. Now we said the highest form of confidential knowledge is when the Lord reciprocates with his bhaktas. And the Lord tells us how he reciprocates, how he responds to bhakti. in this particular shloka. Ananyas mam ye janah paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, exclusive, not worshipping anybody else. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. That is the role that Krishna is playing in the life of his devotees. Devotees who worship him exclusively. Devotees who worship his form as Shyama Sundara. To them, Krishna will preserve whatever they have as long as that helps them make progress on the path of bhakti. And he also gives them what they lack to help them progress on the path of bhakti. This is not referencing material things. Whatever spiritual credits we have, that's preserved for us. Whatever more progress we need to make, Krishna himself gives us that as a gift, as an unexpected gift. That's the role that Krishna plays in the lives of his devotees, how he reciprocates with them. And Krishna concludes this chapter by glorifying bhakti. Krishna uses the word sulabham. Bhakti is actually very easy. It is so easy, not many people want to do it because they think something is wrong. If the process is too easy, that means it must be cheap. Only if I undertake a very difficult process that challenges me on so many different levels, then it's a worthy endeavor. Krishna says bhakti is so simple. For the complicated people, they'll never pick it up because it's too easy. They'll have doubts because the process is so easy. So bhakti is so simple. Krishna is saying, Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachate tadaham bhaktyo bhritam ashnami prayatat manaha. Krishna is saying, if one offers me with love and devotion, a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. Here, Krishna is directly telling you what he wants. What does he want? Your love and devotion. And with your love and devotion, what should you offer him? A leaf, a flower, a fruit, or what? Krishna says, if you do this, I will accept it. But for those who do not do this, I will come to that because I don't think that shloka is mentioned here in the slide. So we'll come to shloka 27. So let's say you don't have love and devotion for Krishna. He's saying, at least do this. Yat karoshi yadashnasi, yat juhoshi dadasi yat, yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tat purushva madarpanam. In case, just in case you don't want to be a devotee of Krishna, you're not ready to surrender to him, Krishna is giving you an alternative. If you have no love and affection for Krishna, Krishna says at a minimum, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. In this particular shloka, Krishna has not talked about love, no affection, no devotion. He's saying whatever you want to do. Let's just say, I am telling you what I want you to do. With love and affection, offer me these simple things. But if you're a complicated person and you think you should do whatever you want to do, then at least there also Krishna has given you some advice. He's saying whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you give away, Whatever austerities you perform, you do it as an offering to me. So Krishna is not letting you go. Krishna is still not demanding your love and affection. He recognizes that not everybody is there to give him this love and affection. They're not ready. They're not prepared. Their consciousness has not developed to get them to this topmost path of love and devotion. But yet Krishna is not forgetting those who are not ready. He's saying, okay, I understand that you may not be ready, but can you at least do this? Remember, Krishna doesn't say, I will accept it, like he said in the previous shloka. He's simply saying, offer it, because that will also benefit you. So we come back to the topic of Nishkama Karma. That is actually the shloka 27. Remember, in chapter 2, Krishna has said, we all have to maintain our body, and therefore to maintain our body, we have to work. As a Kshatriya, you have to fight to defend your kingdom. So since work is necessary, everything that you do and get out of that work, whatever results that you get, whatever sacrifices that you are doing, whatever tapas you are doing, Krishna is saying just offer it everything to him. So any dharmic uh, processes you're undertaking, Krishna says do it for me. If you're going to eat, Krishna says offer whatever you're eating before you eat it, give it to me. If you're performing charity, Krishna says you first give it to me. If you're observing some austerities, Krishna says give it to me. If you're not ready to express your love for him, then he's saying eat only prasadam. Whatever charity you do, you offer it in my service. Whatever austerities you keep, meditate on such austerities, chanting the holy names of God. And Krishna tells you what is the benefit of this freedom. Freedom that comes by connecting all our activities with the Lord, by following what is called regulated principles of freedom. Yes, we have freedom, but we should regulate it so that we don't cross over to the other side. In this way, Krishna is telling Arjuna, you will be freed from bondage to work and its auspicious and inauspicious results. With your mind fixed on me in this principle of renunciation, you will be liberated and come to me. So Krishna is telling you what is the benefit, even if you don't have love and affection. And as if to say, because Krishna has contrasted his devotees and non-devotees and various levels of consciousness, Krishna is reassuring Arjuna here. I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all, but whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. Krishna is saying, I am impartial to everybody. Whatever they offer me, I reciprocate accordingly. But that one person, no, that one person who becomes my partner, oh, I become his friend. He is always thinking about me, I am always thinking about him. So Krishna is partial to his devotees. He is impartially partial to his devotees. Otherwise, he is impartial to all. He is equal to all. But for his devotees, he has a very special place in his heart. He takes special care of his devotees. So Krishna said, I am not partial to anybody, except for one category person. I am partial to my devotees. Otherwise, I treat everybody equally. Whatever they want, I give them. How much ever they give me, I give them. Because I don't want to be indebted. But then my devotees, they don't ask me for anything. So therefore, I'm always indebted to them. So much so I am ready to become their servant. That's the reciprocation between the Lord and his pure devotees. And then Krishna warns us. So sometimes we may see a pure devotee and we may go out of our way to find faults in it. There is a saying, every saint has a past, every sinner has a future. Every saint at some point may have done some erroneous things. Every sinner today may do good things in the future. So Krishna is warning us, even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. Krishna says, my devotees may not be perfect to you in your eyes. In my eyes, they are a saint. Why? Because they know I'm the Supreme Lord and they've already taken that first step to surrender to me. Therefore, I disregard whatever nonsense they may have done in the past. Therefore, Krishna is saying, so don't look at them with material eyes. If they are my devotee, I have accepted them as saints. And Krishna is saying, what happens to this person who may have had a lot of faulty ways of living, faulty things that they have done, sinful things that they have done, but now because they have become his devotee, Krishna says, he quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. And then he's commanding Arjuna to declare, O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. He may have done all kinds of sinful things. Krishna is saying, such a devotee of mine, I take care of him, he does not perish. The very last shloka, Krishna is again coming back to the point of what we should do. What is the mood of a devotee? Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam evaishyasi yuktvaivam atmanam matparayana. So Krishna has 4 instructions for us. Engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer your obeisances to me and worship me. 4 instructions. We should always think of Krishna. We should become his devotee. We should offer our obeisances to him. And we should worship him. So actually Krishna is saying, if you can't think of me all the time, then at least become my devotee. If you can't become my devotee, at least learn to offer obeisances to me. If you've not learned how to offer obeisances to me, at least learn how to worship. So Krishna's preference is that we should always be thinking of him. If you can't do that, become a devotee. Can't be a devotee, offer your obeisances. Can't offer obeisances, worship. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. This is the definition of Krishna consciousness. When the Lord says, always think of me, it means your consciousness is always dwelling on the Supreme Lord. And that's why Srila Prabhupada named this institution the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, because this is the foremost instruction of Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, that we should always remember him, and therefore we should never forget him. And that is Krishna consciousness. This is the topmost knowledge and the topmost secret, that Krishna wants you to be Krishna conscious.